presentation here on the industry-sponsored stage. It is from the fine people at the Outloud Group, and we actually have the CEO here to speak with us about this. A great topic, return on influencer, which I know is actually pretty hot in the news because people question the value of that, and I think we're going to learn how to actually pull that off. So big more round of applause for the CEO of the Outloud Group, Joel Beckett.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you all so much for being here. I know that there are a lot of other panels and options right now, so I'm very grateful that you're here. I'm Joel, I'm the CEO of the Outloud Group. I've got a few of my colleagues in the audience, if you guys wouldn't mind standing up real quick and wave. So if by chance I say something useful and you'd like to follow up, please feel free to have a conversation with these guys. So we're an influencer marketing agency. We've been in this space for 12 years. We are headquartered in lovely Detroit, Michigan. And what I want to tackle this morning is the very real issue of return on influencer. Is this worth it? Is it worth the money? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the sweat and the heartache that tends to go into running a successful influencer campaign? I was at a panel last year where multiple actually sessions at VidCon last year, where the theme was influencer is dead. The bubble has burst and it's not working anymore. Since that time, last year, another $4 billion have come into this space. So obviously it's working for somebody. Folks in the back, there are a bunch of seats up here still if you would prefer to be in a seat. So most of you are in all likelihood convinced that there's some efficacy to influencer because you're here. You believe that it's necessary, but just in the case that you're wavering, I want to throw a couple stats at you. We believe that influencer is an indispensable part of your marketing campaign, that any big brand that wants to grow, that wants to be relevant, that wants to build a brand, has to be an influencer. Why? Because half of 25 to 44-year-olds have cut the cord or they never had a cord in the first place. TV, the audience is dwindling, it's not there anymore. There are 5 billion videos on YouTube watched every single day. There's an audience there. 75% of North Americans have some kind of ad blocker. So whatever effectiveness display used to have, we smart people have figured out a way to tailor our own internet experience. We're not seeing ad blockers, or we're using ad blockers, and we're not seeing ads in the way that we used to. All this leads us, and we could throw up a whole bunch more evidence, but all this leads us to believe that this is a necessary channel. And so how do we get it right? As I said, we've been in this space for 12 years, and we've seen multiple brands have a lot of success. We've also seen brands run mediocre campaigns, and then we've also seen some completely fail. Well, why did they fail? And why did the ones who succeed? I want to highlight a couple of key brands. Audible's been shouted out in a few sessions. I believe that they are, in fact, in the room. Audible's been, they're the ninjas at this. They're like the old gurus who've been doing this for a really long time. They figured it out, and they figured it out because they asked a few questions. We're going to get to those in a second. 23andMe has been highly successful in their influencer campaigns. 23andMe had a big problem. The brand awareness sucked outside of coastal elites who listened to NPR. Anybody else didn't know who they were, didn't know why they would do it. They also had a huge problem. There was a big impediment to purchase, which was the DNA. What's going to happen to my DNA? Is it going to be private? Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be secure? So 23andMe ran multiple campaigns addressing these issues. It was wildly successful for them. Their brand awareness in the middle of the country skyrocketed. They had people openly advocating for them online for the safety of their data. Simply Safe is a relatively recent entrant into the influencer space. They're killing it right now. Why? Because it's a product that isn't all that sexy, necessary. It's a home security system. It's not all that sexy, but it's necessary. And what they need is for people to see how easy the setup is. And so influencers uniquely qualified for this. It's really difficult to demonstrate this in a TV commercial. Influencer works really, really well because you have influencers setting up their own security system, their parents' home security system. It works beautifully. Wix, another another brand that's having a ton of success. Again, it's a highly visual product. The websites they make are beautiful, and people really resonate when they see their favorite creator making these websites. Grubhub has struck gold in the gaming streaming space, particularly on Twitch. Why? Because guys who sit at a console for 12 hours a day get hungry and they don't want to leave because they'll miss the next Fortnite round. Now, I'm not highlighting these just to name drop the fact that Outloud has run staggeringly successful campaigns for them. I actually have another motivation, which is these guys have all answered 5 key questions before or shortly thereafter starting their influencer campaign, and it's created a mindset for them that has allowed them to be successful. And just, sorry, I should, who here represents a brand or works directly for a brand? Show of hands. Who's with an agency? Are there creators here? Okay, a handful. All right, great. Thanks for coming, guys. These are the 5 questions that any brand, if you're an agency, you need to make sure the brand is squared on before you start your campaign. Number 1, where's the creative come from? Number 2, how chill is your legal team? Next, is there a turf war between your various agencies? Are you going to use an AOR? Are you going to run your influencer through your AOR or somewhere else? Are you going to do it directly in-house, or are you going to use a dedicated influencer agency? Is there a turf war internally about where influencer lives? And then lastly, and this is where I'm going to spend the most of my time, is how the hell do you measure this? So, first question, where does the creative come from? Every time we talk to a new brand, we get on the phone and we ask them this question: where do you expect the creative is going to come from? Now, if we're talking to them, they have some familiarity with influencer, and so of course they're going to say, well, look, the creative has to come from the influencer. That's why we're doing this. They've got the audience, we want it to be authentic, we want it to be in their voice. We have lots of great conversation around that. And then invariably, when we actually get to the execution and we submit the spot prior to it going live, all of a sudden, like magic, editorial control comes hammering down. They're like, well, we wanted to say it this way, and wouldn't it be cool if they had a better backdrop and all of that. This has to get solved first. It has to get solved first, because otherwise, if you're not really, really clear going into this, you're going to have a whole lot of issues. You're going to piss off the influencers. So there's always going to be tensions between what's brand voice and what is, you're going to be tensions between the creator's brand and the advertiser's brand. And we found a phrase that has been really useful for us in kind of diffusing this tension, which is brand advocacy over brand voice. And so this is what we tell all brands we work with. What you're purchasing is not your brand voice. What you're purchasing is brand advocacy. There's a lot of great channels for brand voice. You're out of home, you're experiential, you're paid social. All of that stuff is great. That's where your brand voice should live. That's where you build your own brand. Not on influencer. Influencer is advocacy. And if you can keep that phrase in mind, that what you're going after is advocacy, you're going to be a whole lot more successful. Because the truth of it is, this is an individual who's built an enormous audience. They have their own brand. They need to be consistent with that brand. And why not hand the megaphone to the individuals who have this huge audience and talk about why your product matters to them, not why it matters to you. You'll have a lot of opportunity to talk about why it matters to you. Influencer is the wrong channel for this. Next up, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but how chill is your legal team? You will save yourself a lot of heartache if you solve this question early on. And we've seen a lot of campaigns go sideways when legal starts to get involved. They don't have a clear mandate, and all of a sudden they start trying to dictate all sorts of things. Look, I like lawyers. They serve a wonderful purpose. They should not be involved in the marketing mix, because they need to justify their own salaries, which are substantial. They need to justify their own existence. And so if you let them enter into the marketing mix without very, very clear swim lanes, it's going to be a mess. And we've seen this time and time again. And again, like the companies that I highlighted initially have figured this piece out. They've done it early on. Our recommendation, and this is something that we require with anybody that we work with, is that someone internally in your organization that has the chops, probably your CMO or director of marketing, is able to put the legal team in their place, have the discussion beforehand. Narrowly define where their input is going to live, what the input's going to be, what are they allowed to comment on, what are they not allowed to comment on. Lawyers don't understand influencer marketing. It's not their expertise. It needs to live with the marketing team. Okay, next question. Are you going to run your campaign through an AOR, and as such, are you going to create a turf war within your various agencies? So, a lot of brands have an AOR, a lot of brands use everything with multiple different agencies that specialize. Decide this early on. Now, there are AORs who run really, really successful campaigns. However, it's the exception, not the rule. What we more commonly see is an AOR has cross purposes when it comes to influencer. We're from Detroit. I'll use some of the big threes agencies as an example because none of them have ever run a really successful campaign. Why? Because they're spending $1 billion a year in TV, and they're not going to risk that contract by running a $10 million influencer campaign. Why? Because they've all heard of PewDiePie, and they're terrified that an influencer is going to say something stupid, get caught in some scandal, and then they're risking $1 billion media spend. The other reason that AORs tend to be really reluctant to scale is simply because influencers are a lot harder than anything else they're going to do. It's easier to spend $100 million in TV than it is to spend $10 million in influencer. And so if they're set up on some kind of retainer fee, if it's a percentage of media spend, it's not simply worth your time. So if you're a brand and you want to farm out your influencer to your AOR, you need to understand that they are not incented to actually run your influencer campaign in any kind of scalable way. Our recommendation, run it separately. Whether it's in-house, you have a dedicated person, or you have a dedicated influencer agency, that reports directly to you, not to an AOR. Otherwise, we very rarely see anyone able to scale this effectively. Okay, next big question that brands need to ask is, where does influencer live internally? This is a really tough question, and I would encourage you to spend a fair bit of time thinking about it, because influencer, it's part PR, it is part brand, it's part acquisition, it's part retention, it's part advocacy, and it's kind of all of these and none of these at the same time. And whatever department this gets put in, whether it gets put into social or put into PR or put into acquisition, it's necessarily going to skew the focus of the influencer campaign in that direction according to whatever the mandate of that department is. And as such, you're going to focus on this and you're going to miss the much bigger value of influencer. Our recommendation, influencer should be its own thing. If you're serious about this, if you're serious about getting the effectiveness out of this channel, it should be separate. They should have a main line to, again, someone with the chops in your organization who can clear the decks from them, who can eliminate the bureaucratic hurdles of running an influencer campaign. Have someone internally that's set free. It should be separate, it should be distinct. If you've observed nothing else at VidCon, surely you see that influencer is its own world, its own culture, it's got its own rules. Your marketing needs to reflect that reality. Okay, so if you are a creator, for the handful of you in the audience, before you engage a brand, here's our recommendation. Check these two things. Ask them what they're expecting to purchase. Are they expecting to purchase brand voice? Are they expecting you to simply parrot what the brand wants to say about itself? Or are they purchasing genuine advocacy? If they can't answer that question, I would encourage you to wave off. Ask them about what role their legal team will have. If they can't give you an answer, if they haven't said, yes, we've had this conversation with legal, wait until they do. For brands, same thing. Are you buying advocacy or are you buying voice? Have you had the conversation with the legal team? Have you decided what are the various incentives for your key players in terms of where this is going to live, either externally or internally? And the companies that have been successful have gone through this process, and they cleared the runway, so to speak, for these. So, all right, let's get to the big piece. This is where I want to spend most of my time. How the hell do you measure this? We've had so many conversations. Every time we get on the phone, what are your KPIs? How do you measure this? Well, that's hard. Yeah, it is. It is. It's really, really difficult. And this is what we commonly see, is that when we're talking to our various brands, they're like, well, we've seen a lot of success in mobile. Let me explain this cartoon, just in case those in the back can't see it. Guy gets a mailer for a shoe. Guy sees a billboard for a shoe. He sees a banner ad for a shoe. He hears about a shoe on the radio. Sees a TV ad. Finally converts on mobile. And of course, the marketing department says, obviously, we should move 100% of our spending to mobile. It's what works. You can't measure YouTube according to the means that you measure other channels. So, TV-heavy brands who really built their brand on TV, they want to measure YouTube according to TV. It's a video. It's a visual medium. We should be able to measure it the same way that you can measure TV. Well, no, you can't. Because most TV is measured according to spot attribution, which is a spike in traffic immediately following an ad in a certain demo. Well, the views aren't concurrent in YouTube, so you can't measure it that way. Well, we should measure this according to our search engine marketing. We're able to have a $25 conversion for our paid search. Yeah, that's someone who's already looking for your search, or looking for your product. If you're trying to measure it according to your SEM, you're going to completely skew yourself because you're eliminating the entire value of the upper funnel. Well, we found paid social to be really, really effective. Yeah, paid social is great because Facebook and Insta know everything that you're doing online, and they're able to effectively serve up ads at the time that you're most likely to convert. Facebook and Insta are great at last touch conversions. But that doesn't mean that they led to the conversion. It means they capitalized on work that was done previously. Another fantastic cartoon, and this is, again, what we see. Cops asking you, man, is this where you lost your wallet? No, I lost it in the park, but this is where the light is. It's the street light effect that we're going to look for the thing where we think that we can measure it. On a flight recently, I watched this amazing documentary called In Search of Greatness, and it tracks Wayne Gretzky and Pele and Jerry Rice, three of the most accomplished athletes of all time. And it's really fascinating. David Epstein, who's a sports reporter, was talking about how Wayne Gretzky, if he were coming up through juniors right now, and the main line into the NHL, he would have failed the combine. The way that they measure prospective players would have cut out Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player of all time. Jerry Rice would not have made it through the combine, would have never made it into the NFL today, given the way that they measure prospective players. And Epstein had this amazing quote. He said it's backward. It's making something important because we can measure it, not measuring it because it's important. I want to say that again because I think it's so profound. It's making something important because we can measure it, not measuring it because it's important. And we see this a ton, especially with VC-funded companies. The VC guys aren't marketing experts, but they're numbers experts. And so when they can see, oh, you got someone for this amount, that's all we're going to do. And it's the same thing as the cartoon a few slides earlier. So, we at the Outloud Group have been working on this for a really long time because we want to fully answer the question, how do you adequately measure this? Influencer is a full funnel activity. It needs a full funnel measurement tool. And if you're like, we have this in a spreadsheet. If you're interested, make sure you grab one of us afterward, give us your card, we'll be able to share this with you. But here's what we're looking at. You gotta measure the awareness. There's a huge awareness component to influencer. Measure it. How do you measure it? Well, obviously there's the reach, obviously the CPM that you're paying for each one of those eyeballs. Look at the earned media value. There's an enormous amount of really compelling research that says this is what the earned media value is of this campaign. Measure that, give credit for it, roll that into your ROI. The consideration. Really pay attention to the traffic that influencer does send. Here's what you're going to find. You're going to find that the time on site is longer. You're going to find that their page views are better. And if you've got your retargeting game in play, you're going to find that influencer traffic that initiated through influencer that you retarget is going to convert easier and quicker than other traffic sources. And then obviously you measure your conversions. Number of new customers, the purchase price, what's the conversion rate, etc. Now you'll notice something for both consideration and conversion. We've broken these out into two buckets, the attributable and the unattributable. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we faced in the agency world over the years is understanding what's the unattributable element of this. Because most brands understand intuitively that they're getting some kind of unattributable traffic, right? Not everyone is going to click on a link in the show notes. Not everyone's going to use a vanity URL. But understanding what the ratio is between attributable to unattributable is really, really hard. You can try a post-purchase survey. That might give you some insight. But again, this is self-reported activity, which is inherently unreliable. So this is what we've been working on lately that we're really excited about. We're calling it the OR effect, the out loud amplification ratio. And so here's what we've done. Sorry, give me a minute. Here's what we've done. We partnered with the largest Clickstream data panel in the world. This is a company who has browser plugins who people have opted in to have their internet traffic followed. Under the auspices of keeping the internet safe, etc. So this data is then anonymized and then it's licensed. And what this company typically does is they go to a brand and they say, we're going to share the Clickstream data 7 days prior to a conversion event so you can understand your own customer journey. Well, we have them build a product for us that instead of starting at the point of purchase, we start at the point of a view of a YouTube video that has an integration. And so we look at this panel and we say, how many people in your panel saw one of these videos? In the first couple tests that we run, we actually came up with 250,000 people, which is a massive sample size, that has viewed one of these videos. And then we're able to say, all right, out of that 250,000, how many clicked on a unique vanity URL, a bit.ly, and then how many opened up a new tab, simply went to a direct URL, or entered your company into a search engine and went that way. The second question that we asked was, all right, out of those who converted through a vanity URL, and then how many converted by some other means? And because this is Clickstream data, any product that's on Amazon often misses all the conversions that come through Amazon or a Target or a Best Buy. And so we were able to say, all right, who converts using the vanity URL, but then who converts independently through direct URL or through some kind of third-party marketplace? And we're finally able to establish this ratio. And so here's what we found. 7 days following a video, we found that for every one visit that you can measure, there were another 5. Looking at a 7-day window, the clock starts when someone watches the video. For every one, you get another 5. For conversions, for every one that you can see, there were another 3.5 that you couldn't see. Converting either via direct URL or converting on Amazon or Target or some other third-party marketplace. So this is massive. This is for the first time we actually have legitimate defensible data that says influencer is way more valuable than we thought it was. And you couldn't see it because you were measuring it the wrong way. Because we were treating this purely as a direct response campaign. Well, it is a direct response acquisition channel, we just weren't measuring it properly. So this is what we found. We found that when we look at this Clickstream data, we see all the conversions that we weren't seeing. And so we've been able to undo the streetlight effect and see what's really, really going on. The other element of this that again, successful brands have had is they understand that influencer has a massive halo effect across their other channels. It's going to make your SEM more effective. Your paid social is going to convert at a lower acquisition cost. You're going to ramp up your email campaigns. The number of the traffic that comes through influencer, enters in an email but then abandons later is huge. And so you're able to retarget that. It's going to make your blogs, your TV more effective. So influencer, it needs some element of credit for how much it's making your other channels more effective. So again, back to this. Now that we have some kind of defensible ratio between what the attributable and unattributable traffic is, and the attributable and unattributable conversions, we're able to then really understand what the return on influencer is. And so as I said, Brad from my team has spearheaded this effort to have this calculator where literally all you have to do is plug in your numbers. What's your acquisition cost? What do we expect the ratio to be, etc. And it spits out saying, no, this is your return on influencer. And your influencer is X amount effective. So again, if you're interested in this, we're happy to share more. Influencer is a full funnel activity. It needs to be measured according to with a full funnel measurement tool. So it's changing, it's time to adapt, and with that, I would love to hear any questions. Is there anything you want me to dig in deeper on? And there are microphones around. Miami from my team has a microphone, and Mr. Spark has a microphone. We got one in the back, two in the back, one over here. White shirt.
So the war tool, is that something that you make available to brands that partner with you, or is that a study that you've done once independently that you apply to scale?
We've done this study across a couple different brands. We're seeing the same ratios consistently. If a brand were working with us and we were doing any kind of scale, then we would wrap that kind of reporting into the campaign. Yeah. Striped shirt in the back.
I got it.
How important is it to you guys to run your paid social alongside your influencer marketing?
I believe in the full marketing mix. I believe that one of the curses of the digital age is, again, because we can measure it, we place undue importance on it. People, and we've heard this repeatedly. Somebody, we actually had a CMO of a brand say, YouTube's a digital channel, it ought to perform like other digital channels, and we should be able to measure this according to the last click attribution. I think that's profoundly naive. I don't think anybody makes a purchase decision that spontaneously, and if it is, it's a tiny percentage. I believe in the full media marketing mix. I think increasingly with how much noise there is and how bombarded people are with ads, I think influencer is absolutely crucial to be run alongside multiple different. Again, it's going to make your SEM more effective. It's going to make your paid social more effective. Paid social is great at converting last touch, but there was 5 or 6 other touches prior to happening that resulted in somebody converting. So I think it's crucial. Does that answer your question? Am I getting at what you want?
I meant more like amplification, like whitelisting posts, etc. So how crucial is it?
Okay, so the question, all right, so whitelisting posts, that kind of amplification, we're pretty tepid on that. I would say, look, this is my taking, don't take any offense, but I think brands who are co-opting, say, an influencer post and then rerunning it, it's trying to split the middle of two things that should be on their own. So I absolutely believe in user-generated content, but I believe user-generated content should be user-generated content and not merely taking the influencer stuff and trying to run it elsewhere. I have your own realistic UGC strategy, and then if you're going to do creative for paid social, really get the good creative. And using influencer, if you're going to use influencers, have them create something unique for your paid social campaigns. Don't just co-opt what they're putting on their own channel, because I think it misses the efficacy of both, and it's trying to frankly it strikes us as kind of the lazy way out. And I get the marketing departments, so everyone's super tasked, everyone has more work than they can handle, but the ideal is have a really, really fantastic creative agency design your creative for your paid social. If you want influencers involved in that, great. Have them design something unique though. Right here.
Do you find that the ratio varies based off the price point of the product? So, you know, a 1 to 3.5 for a $2 candy bar versus a $2,000, you know, entertainment system or something like that?
Yeah, really good question. So here's what we saw when we're looking at the data. If we're looking at a mere like a 7-day time window, yes, it absolutely does. For a more expensive product, you might have more like a 2x multiplier. If we extend that time frame out, which is reasonable for any kind of bigger purchase decision, then the ratio holds true. But you just got to look at it at a longer time window. So, for instance, for these that I referenced, I'm using a 7-day time window because we feel really, really comfortable that influencer integration was a key part of that purchase decision, and maybe even the defining part of that purchase decision. You go out longer. If we look at 30 days, we're going to see the traffic ratio jumps from 1 to 10, and the conversion ratio jumps from 1 to 6.5. Now, there were likely other touches along the way. We can say defensively this was an important part of the customer journey and ought not to be discounted. For more expensive products, I think it takes, like, you know, for instance, Casper is big on YouTube. There's a big time lag between when someone's going to make the decision to purchase and when they're doing it. Simply Safe. Installing a home security system is a big decision, and it's going to take, you know, a couple hours to set it up, etc. People are going to make the decision to do it and then actually convert way later. And there are any number of brands that have 80% of their conversions that happen in a 30-day window between Thanksgiving and Christmas. People had decided to convert well before then, but they convert then, it's gift giving, etc. So the ratios hold true if you look at a longer time window for the more expensive purchases.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning.
I work for a financial platform, and so your section on the balance between marketing and legal rings loud and clear. So we often run into issues, you know, securing influencers and having to control the message from our side. And the difficulty, I was wondering if you could speak to any experiences with clients where you were able to smooth that journey, allowing influencers to kind of use their voice and use their creativity without kind of running afoul of FINRA or SEC regulations.
Sure. Yeah, so the 23andMe is the most obvious example because it's an FDA-regulated product. There are all sorts of things that someone can't say. So what we did is we spent a lot of time on the phone with each influencer prior to the creative, where it's like, hey, look, and we explained it fully, it's an FDA-regulated product, here's what you cannot say. If you deliver us some creative that says 23andMe cured cancer, you're not going to be able to publish it and we're not going to pay you. Like, this is just the reality of it. However, more importantly than that is there are things that you can say about your product and service that have nothing to do with FINRA regulated things.
You can't say we make money. That's the big problem, is if an influencer can't say I made, you know, $3,000 this month using this app, we don't think their followers will download it. So it kind of becomes a chicken and egg discussion.
Can they say that there's enormous income opportunity or meaningful income opportunity?
That's right on the line, but that might be a good way to word it.
Yeah, I mean, I would need to know a little bit more about the product, but I would say absolutely, there is a solution. Look, there are ways that creators know their own audience, they know what's going to resonate with it. So they can talk about it in the context of freedom. Like, hey, if you're doing a side job, you're driving for Lyft, I can tell you that there's more opportunity over here by using X or doing X. There are ways to frame it where you can communicate on a relative scale what the income potential is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Others? One right here.
Thank you, by the way, for everything.
Yeah.
I was wondering, with the data you're able to receive, it's probably too much information, but on a pricing model, are you doing something along the lines of like a CPC plus 7? Because it's like 7 days out, so you could add a premium to that? Or are you just doing it for, you know, educating the consumer?
Sure. No, we don't do CPC because we think it's unfair to the influencers. We want to pay an influencer what we believe that it's worth, and for us to convert, it's going to be on us to pick the right influencers and run the right kind of campaigns. I don't like cost per acquisition campaigns. I don't like affiliate. I don't like anything where an influencer is giving you their labor and then they're trusting you to simply say this is what you earn. There are too many that have got burned when they've tried it. So they're putting a price on this is what it will cost me to do the integration. By all means, negotiate that. But I really believe in paying influencers a flat rate.
But if you're going to a brand direct to try to get money for the influencer, you would mention it but not guarantee it? That's basically.
Yeah, we would say this is what we're expecting. You know, these are the response rates we're expecting. This is what we think the attributable to unattributable is. If they're running with enough scale, we'll run a study for them. We'll be able to demonstrate. Yeah, this is the traffic that was generated. These are the conversions that were generated, and it backed out. And so we do a ton of reporting on that because it's really important for us to be able to demonstrate this was worthwhile for you. And look, I started this company in 2007. 2008, the market tanked. My one advertiser, we were producing podcasts at the time, and my one advertiser went from paying a $50 CPM to a $5 CPM. And they said, you're gonna take this because there's no one else out there that's gonna advertise on your podcast. And I learned a really, really important lesson there is we need to do everything we possibly can to be the last man standing when every other ad budget has gotten cut. And I think influencer is defensible. I think this is effective enough that it ought to be the last thing standing when every other budget gets cut.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. One more back here.
I guess I have a two-part question. First is, are you saying that you need the 3.5 unattributed sales in order to run influencer ROI positive? And if so, if you're a brand or a product that isn't omnichannel or sold on Amazon, Walmart, etc., does influencer not ever get ROI positive?
No, I think it does. Look, right now there are a ton of people who are measuring influencer purely by attributable direct response mean, and it's working. I mean, this is what's amazing about it. If a company has a $100 acquisition goal, we're able to hit that all day long. The point of this is that your real acquisition was actually 35 bucks. And so this is actually a fair bit more valuable and justifies more budget than what you're currently allocating toward it. Now, your second part of your question was?
Yeah, if I'm like single platform, like I'm only e-commerce on my own domain, I don't sell on Amazon or Target, Walmart, etc., and therefore kind of like off-platform attribution or unattributed may not be part of our opportunity, then what happens? So
for the campaigns that we've run thus far, if we're looking at the attributed to unattributed ratio, and we take the unattributed portion of it, you've got about 20% that's happening off-platform on a third-party marketplace. So it's still substantial. It might, instead of 1 to 3.5, it's 1 to 2.8. It still matters, and you're still getting a big chunk of unattributed traffic. And this is a consumer behavior issue. Only 20% of the people that you're reaching want to bother clicking on a unique URL. Or if there is some kind of discount associated with it, the second you say, hey, you get 10 bucks off, then they're like, well, if I'm gonna enter in that, I'm gonna go to Honey, I'm gonna go to Retail Me Not, I'm gonna go somewhere else, I'm gonna see if I can get something off more. And typically they can find something. And this is, I understand that marketing departments want to incent certain campaigns by giving a bigger discount, but all you're doing is skewing your own data when you do that because consumers aren't stupid. So there is still an amplifier as well. Even if it's not on a third-party platform, it's still valuable. I would just say you need to measure it accordingly. But now, will it ever be ROI positive? I don't know. Is it a good product? I mean, if it's a good product, people are going to buy it, and influencers will be excited about talking about it, and they can genuinely advocate for it. And ultimately, that's the thing that you're most looking for. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of like the chart that you put up, it seems like you believe that influencers should use like top of funnel, so more for awareness than like an increase of conversion rate?
No, I think it's a full funnel thing. I think that what we're often seeing is the brands that we work with are going to do two things. One, we want to run influencer because we need to increase brand awareness. And so they're only measuring it by a brand lift study, which that's all well and good. It's going to work, but you've missed this other thing. And then those that are only looking at it as an acquisition channel, well, you missed all this other stuff that has real value. The case that I'm trying to make there is that this is a full funnel marketing channel and needs to be measured with a full funnel measurement tool. because otherwise you're going to miss the value and you're going to skew your own decision making.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Right here.
I got it.
I know that there's like a couple of trends that I've kind of been seeing about using micro-influencers to really just go through the entire funnel and using macro to just generate awareness more so than anything. So what's your recommendation or take on having like the perfect balance between macro and micro?
We take a portfolio view when we're doing our campaigns, and we'll have brands come like, we just only want to run a micro campaign. We say, great, you should do this in-house, you should do it yourself, you should use some kind of automated platform to do it, because otherwise you're going to tear your hair out of your, so there are a bunch of different platforms, Aspire, Maverick, whatever, especially if it's going to be Insta-focused. Do that as automated as possible. If you're wanting to get to real advocacy and if you're wanting to get to real reach, then yeah, you're going to need some mid-tier and you're going to need some top-tier talent. We do believe that that's effective. We do believe it needs to be measured accordingly. Obviously, the bigger you're going to get, the lower your conversion rate is going to be. Still meaningful, but the reach really, really matters. And again, with the tool that we've developed, you can weight each portion of the funnel. And so it depends on what your marketing goals. If you know that from your consumer insights research, you really need more of an awareness campaign, well, then you plug that into the formula and say, okay, this is what it would take to get ROI. We need this kind of reach. And we're going to favor bigger, higher reach influencers. It's really, I'm not saying that the big influencers aren't really effective. They are. It matters, but you need to look at a longer timeline for the conversion. Because the bigger the influencer, the lower the conversion. Simply because there's less key connection to the audience. I mean, that's one of the most valuable things about influencer is this deep connection to the audience. Smaller micro influencers are going to have more of a connection. It's smaller. No one's hopped on the bandwagon and they're not watching this channel because everyone else is. They're watching it because they genuinely like the content. They've connected with the creator. And so yeah, that's always going to have a higher conversion. But again, we want to take a portfolio view. I mean, we see more often than not marketing teams that are like, we're a data-driven marketing team. They end up being too smart by half. And they fall into the basic problem of we think it's important because we can measure it, not we're measuring what's important. We got one over, is that a half question? We got one in the back.
You mentioned that Outloud tool. Is that available online?
We don't have it up online, but give one of my colleagues your card and we'll get it to you. Anyone else? Oh. All right.
Hello.
Hi.
So when you mentioned evaluating EMV, there's obviously a lot of inflation that can happen in the world of influencers with reach and engagement and the algorithms that are evaluating that. So what are things that you look for or ways you recommend to make sure you're getting an accurate reading?
Sure. So we're gonna look at the real engagement rate before we ever sign up with an influencer, and that's difficult to be faked meaningfully. So there's a fantastic Chrome plugin called WeFind that it allows you to, as you're scrolling through various Instagram posts, Instagrammers, you're going to see what the engagement rate is. And so we would automatically cut out anybody that has like a less than 4% engagement rate according to the way that WeFind calculates it, which I think it's a relatively simple formula of like, I want to say it's like 2x comments plus likes divided by followers or something. It's something very simple, but I think it's really defensible. And so you're going to cut out all of your, phantom Bangladeshi followers at that point. Other questions? Anybody else?
One more? You could have the magical.
Gotcha.
One back there.
What would you say is like your favorite creator that you
Yeah, this is a surprisingly easy answer. There was recently a creator. There was recently a creator that did a couple of really amazing videos, and this was fascinating. He took an AI software package and was able to accurately predict the third base coach's signals to the runner on first. Every single time. It was a really, really fascinating. What's the guy's name?
Starts with an M.
Mark Grover. There you go. Mark Grover. Everyone say hi to Mark. He is indeed my favorite creator, and he runs wonderful, wonderful channels and does fantastic builds. So, hey, thank you all so much for sticking around. I appreciate it. Again, if you're with the Outloud Group, raise your hand. Come grab any of us, and I really appreciate you being here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Give it up again for Joel Beckett.